Hello my fellow friends, it's Chris from Shughead Gaming, bringing you my review for Swordsman VR. Developed and published by Sinn Studios and releasing for PC VR headsets and PlayStation VR this September 25th, 2020. This review will cover both the PC and PSVR versions and include captured gameplay from both. Depending on your region, the game retails for an estimated price of $27 US for the PSVR version and $23 for the Steam version. Swordsman VR is a physics-based sword combat game in which you will stand toe-to-toe with the greatest fighters of the medieval period, as you slash, stab, and parry your way to become the ultimate swordsman. Coming from Sinn Studios, the developers of such VR disappointments as The Perfect Sniper, Wraith and Warzone, Swordsman VR looks like Sinn Studios decided to really level up with this release. Stay with me as I tear this game down and find out if they delivered this time around. As always guys, if you like this video, please hit that like button. It not only helps out my channel, but VR gaming as a whole. And if you'd like to see more VR content from me, please consider subscribing, and for video updates, hit that bell icon. Let's kick things off with a look at graphics. We all saw the trailers and yeah, Swordsman VR looked fantastic. In fact, it looked so good that given Sinn's previous efforts, I honestly couldn't believe what I was seeing. No, really, I didn't believe it was genuine in-game footage. Well, you know what? It actually was. Jumping first into the PSVR version, the quality textures and nice lighting was in fact present. Unfortunately, the game was very blurry, so much so that the whole game felt slightly out of focus. However, I was shocked and impressed to find that Sinn Studios had put in the settings the ability to change the anti-aliasing setting from TAA to FXAA, and as a result turning off the aggressive anti-aliasing, giving the game a much sharper appearance. Essentially, it is the same situation that Firewall players on the Pro ran into when First Contact patched in the ability to turn off that game's aggressive anti-aliasing, resulting in much the same image change as here in Swordsman. All this being said, the overall resolution here is not fantastic, but neither is it make your eyes bleed bad, and still very playable. Better resolution would make this game actually really decent looking, and that's where the PC version comes in, offering higher resolution settings and more anti-aliasing options to tweak. However, this really is the only difference across the two versions, as it would appear that both share the same textures, animations, and particle effects. And that's not a bad thing. Character animations of your combatants are adequate. They still act a bit janky as they stop certain maneuvers mid-swing or simply repeat the same maneuvers in quick succession, coming off a bit robotic. However, they are fluid and real enough that it was easy to get into the combat and had me watching carefully to see what my opponent's next move was. In fact, the character animations here are actually often better than the popular PC title Blade and Sorcery. Character models as well as your own fully rendered body are again pretty decent, let down only by the lower resolution. NPC faces aren't exactly AAA quality, but they served me just fine when stabbing my sword into their brain bag. That being said, blood and gore effects are a bit weak and could be much more intense. Puncture wounds on bodies are present and you can get your sword bloody, but the game lacks the visceral body mutilation seen in similar titles like Blade and Sorcery and Gorn, which visually makes the game actually feel less immersive. All in all, Swordsman VR won't win any awards for best VR graphics of the year, but this is a very competent game visually and a big leap in quality for Sinn Studios. Sound is up next.
I know what you seek. I pray you never find. The Jotun.
Sinn Studios again delivers a solid output when looking at the sound mix. From the opening scene when greeted by what I assume was my guide, I was genuinely shocked to hear a quality performance come out of his face. So often smaller studios simply lack the funding or talent to get and produce proper voiceovers. Jumping into the staging area, I was again greeted by a handful of companions, each offering me their assistance. And damn, they sounded good too, delivering performances that wouldn't have been out of place in, say, Skyrim. This combined with a beautiful and haunting orchestral score in the background, and Sinn was sounding like a game made by an experienced game studio. Combat situations, the core of the game, sees the quality music continue with some genuinely good and epic arrangements, fitting to the gladiator style of gameplay at hand. Sword and shield impacts along with the grunts and groans of your combatants are decent, but I would have liked to hear more variety to spice up the combat a bit and give NPCs a bit more character, making them feel less like faceless minion number 200. And that brings us to gameplay. PC headsets have had the pleasure of physics-based arena combat titles such as Blade and Sorcery and Hellsplit Arena, with the incoming Undead Citadel following later this year. Unfortunately, the PSVR, with the exception of the very cartoon Gorn, has really lacked any grounded and visceral sword-based combat to sink its teeth into. As such, PSVR headsets have been eagerly awaiting this title, so does it deliver? Well, kinda. Swordsman VR offers up 2 modes to jump into, the first of which is a campaign mode consisting of 4 levels, each consisting of 9 separate fights. Essentially, a selection of waves across the game's 6 arenas, and concluding with a boss fight in the form of a more powerful opponent. The end game is, however, a final fight with a big baddie, but only if you're ready. Throughout the campaign, you will unlock new and better equipment in the form of armor and swords. In addition, you will earn gold to purchase said upgrades, as well as experience points that can be put into the attributes of agility, vitality, strength, mastery, greed, and intelligence. In addition, you can level up the skills of telekinesis and chronokinesis, the former of which allows you to grab items from a further distance, and the latter allowing players to slow down time when in combat. Leveling up your equipment and skills to defeat the end boss is the game loop in a nutshell, and it kept me entertained for about an hour, until I realized that the combat, well, fun at first, simply ran out of new ideas after just a handful of waves. Characters recycle across just a handful of models and loadouts and really lack anything in the way of personality or unique fighting abilities. Waves will pit you against 1 to 3 combatants who will mix it up between attacking you in pairs or one-on-one. Sure, you have your shield guys, your armored guys, and a few samurais for some cultural diversity, but ultimately it all feels rather generic. As for the combat itself, it's only okay, often feeling like a work in progress or an early access title. Combat is played in real time and completely free in its movement, hence going for a much more grounded approach than the almost turn-based style of Until You Fall. Like you would hope, fights consist of blocking, parrying, and attempting to find openings on your opponents to land a swing or a stab. Admittedly, the game has a decent foundation with NPCs that change up their stance and modify their attacks enough to keep you on your toes. Range actually matters, and you will often be punished for just running in without some form of strategy. In fact, even at the lowest difficulty, death for either side can come quick. Unfortunately, there are some issues holding Swordsman VR back from being anything more than a quick blast of forgettable fun. Sword and body impacts, while weight and physics-based in nature, rarely feel like they are grounded in reality, with your own weapons feeling weightless regardless of what you do in the settings. Matters are made worse by the lack of any stamina meter for your character, something that I feel is a necessity to stop players from acting like kids fighting in a playground and just swinging away. This aspect is made even more obvious by the fact that when you make contact, it just doesn't feel heavy enough. On top of all this, the combat as a whole is often marred by multiple glitches, resulting in enemies stuck on weapons, dropped swords, and janky animations, especially when engaged in close combat. The game also has balancing issues with certain weapons and the go-to move of the stab being a little overpowered and often breaking the game challenge level-wise. Turning up the difficulty doesn't really help this much either, for instead of better fighters, you will simply run into more aggressive enemies that will often just kill you in one hit. Now, all this could be forgiven if the game allowed itself to be a sandbox of gore and carnage. Point in fact, every arena game I previously listed shares in most of the above issues, but what they have going for them and the Swordsman sorely lacks is the ability to chop up, skewer, and simply have fun with the ridiculousness of it all. It has no limb dismemberment, a limited damage model, and really not that much variety in its level design or weapon offerings to offer much in the way of replay value. Levels are basically the same flat arena, simply reskinned, offering no verticality or interesting obstacles. Weapons are relegated to simply different swords, and outside of weapons with some elemental effects, the game lacks any of the magical abilities seen in Blade and Sorcery. As a result of all these missing features, the second mode in Swordsman VR, coming in the form of a custom arena mode, is really little more than a place to go and farm for golden experience points, with some basic modifiers turned on and off that will increase or decrease your winnings accordingly. For once you slog through the grind that is the campaign, you are likely not going to want to go and do the same thing 100 more times. Swordsman VR could be played seated, I suppose, but it really is a game that needs to be played standing with an adequate amount of space and 2 motion controllers. The game handles movement using full locomotion and the option of either click or smooth turning. As for the controls themselves, the PC headsets with their use of analog sticks make dancing around opponents much easier and much more intuitive. That being said, for PSVR users, forward movement is placed on the left move button with turning, strafing, and reverse all on various face buttons across both controllers. It's not ideal, but it's also nothing you aren't already used to and will likely adapt quickly after just a bit of frustration. And finally, that brings me to fun factor, my final review. Honestly, I enjoyed my time with Swordsman VR much more than I thought I would, and it is a good demonstration that Sinn Studios is getting serious about making quality content. The game looks and sounds really decent, and certainly feels much better than their previous VR releases. The game is certainly lacking content and some polish in its combat, but remains a great foundation for Sinn Studios to build upon, which I hope they do. The game most will compare this to, and that I have, Blade and Sorcery, did not start as the game it is today, and is still, of the time of this review, in early access, and certainly filled with enough jank for a few games worth. If Sinn stays with this title, adds in new content and features, as well as polishes the swordplay, they may have something here. As you guys know, I hate numbered review scores and instead review games on a basis of buy it, burn it, or wait on it. As it stands, Swordsman VR is only okay. I know many of you PSVR owners need a game like this in your library, and as such, this game may be worth your money, but be aware that it will likely get dry pretty quick. And again, for my PSVR viewers, if you only buy one sword fighting game in the next while, I encourage you to wait until this Tuesday when Until You Fall comes out on the 29th of September before pulling the trigger, as that game is something special. For PC viewers, well, you already have Until You Fall and many other arena combat games. As such, I would say wait for a sale on this one, as until it develops further, it has nothing you haven't experienced done better. Anyways, guys, that's it for me. If you like this video, please hit that like button, and if you'd like to see more VR content from me, please consider subscribing, and for video updates, hit that bell icon. Thanks for stopping by, guys, and I'll catch you on my next video.